Hey guys, it's your girl Queen B. I can't forget about today's word of the day. Today we have the word largesse, and largesse means the act of generously giving money or to the money given. It can also mean generosity. Now on to the video. Hey guys, welcome to BU, Believe University. Today I have two very special guests. I have Rue and Gabe. Let's start with a little introduction. You want to start with maybe your year, major, yeah, whatever that comes up to mind.
So I'm actually graduated. I graduated in December 2021, but I'm just waiting for commencement. But I was a psych major and a Spanish minor.
I'm Gabe, senior, doing religious studies, and yeah.
Yeah. You can also add what religion you guys practice. That would be great because that's what we're talking about today. Yeah.
I don't have anything specific. I think the closest thing would be Buddhism. I'm still kind of on my own spiritual journey, trying to figure it out for myself.
I love that. Yeah.
And I'm specifically a Sunni Sufi Muslim.
And so you mentioned this. I would like for you guys to talk a little bit about your spiritual journey.
So I actually was raised Catholic. I went to private Catholic high school and grade school for middle school. My mother is Catholic. That's why I ended up being Catholic. My dad isn't. He's actually Protestant. But when they got married, they agreed that they would raise me in my mom's religion. I just realized in high school, Catholicism just wasn't for me. That's also when I came out. And so I realized that the doctrines of the church didn't exactly agree with my identity. And then I got to learn more about the history because I took world religions in high school. We dug deeper into what Catholicism is and all the other stuff historically speaking. I just realized it wasn't for me. And so I kind of wanted to branch out and learn about different things. I think taking that world religions class in high school really helped me. My aunt is Buddhist, and she converted a while ago, actually, way before I started high school. And she used to send me a lot of books on Buddhism and how to meditate and stuff like that. And I realized wow, this is stuff that I can actually find myself doing and understanding, and being able to not just attach myself to other people, but in obviously I'm not going to get attached to earthly possessions. It's not the point of Buddhism, but it's attaching myself to things around me. I think personally for me, nature is really important to me, and Buddhism and the teachings of Buddhism connect a lot with nature, and it makes more sense in my head.
You, Gabe?
So I was also raised Catholic. Since the moment I exited my mother's womb, there's even the videos of me when I was 2 years old. My dad was already indoctrinating me. He had me doing little heartbeat of the Nicene Creed. Back when I was a little baby, I didn't even do it, and then he made me go like that. So yeah, just from the moment I was raised, even having my bedtime stories were stories from the Bible. And then yeah, it kept going. I was kind of whatever throughout most of my childhood, and then in high school, that's during senior year when everyone's like, "Hey, what do you want to do for the rest of your life?" I thought about it quite a bit. And it was always some sort of psychologist, some sort of something, something. I was like, but what about a priest? Because I thought I was raised with this my whole life, and it's just the ultimate form of helping people. So I thought that's the best I could do. So that made me kind of delve deeper into religion. And that's when I really started noticing the kind of, in my personal opinion, what I find to be flaws within the church doctrine and canon law. And at that point, I just kind of got confused, which pushed me into religious studies when I got here. So that way I can learn what the Bible really said about, stuff like homosexuality and other pressing issues. And then it wasn't until during COVID when, I don't know how it started, but I would make these jokes at work. I was like, if I were to ever convert, it'd be either to Islam or the Eastern Orthodox Church. And then not even 3 weeks after I first said it, I was like, you know what? Islam kind of slaps.
No, it does.
Because
Yeah.
I've just been learning about, the way people will be judged only by Allah. Um, and then specifically within Sufism, connection with nature, your greater connection with the universe. I think Sufism is like this nice little like child of Buddhism and Islam, where you get that kind of greater connection to the universe. You avoid attachments and all that stuff, but you still, it's all about finding your love for God and only God, and everything else is secondary. So yeah.
I love that. Yeah, personally, I can attest to like I grew up in a Christian home, but religion didn't really feel. I don't know. I just didn't really like the structure and how organized religion was. So I like kind of really didn't. I don't know. I don't know. I just didn't really. It didn't really like stick with me. So I just like was whatever. But up until like when I got here, my FYS was Islam in the media, and I learned a lot. And like what Islam really means, and like how it gets misconstrued in the media. And so then I took like the next semester I took gender in Islam, and so I just was learning a lot. And I was just like, wow, all these different religions basically mean the same thing. Like they're basically saying the same thing, just like little different variations to it. But the principle is like basically the same thing. And so now I'm just like questioning everything, just like figuring out what like really resonates with me. But I love how you guys both mentioned like the nature aspect, because I really love nature. And so yeah, like was that something that was like compelling, and like why you guys like started following your different religions? Yeah. I was like, anything else per se? I don't know. Like anything that like really just resonated with you and was like, yeah,
I think it's hard for me to like, it sounds weird, but just like pick one religion, because like I really appreciate like the foundational teachings of each religion. Like I may not find myself to be Catholic anymore, but I do understand where they're coming from, because like you said, like all religions, like they all kind of like there's variations on how you do things and like how things come about, but the whole point is like, oh, like you want to be nice to people, you want to have harmony with the universe and the people in it, with nature, that stuff. Like I really love that foundational aspect. It's the how we do things and how people can take those things and interpret it within themselves that makes me uncomfortable. Because like, yeah, I interpret things the way I want to interpret things, but then people take it like somewhere else, and then you're like, wait, whoa, like I don't know where that came from. So for me, it's like hard to just pick one thing, but I guess Buddhism was the closest thing. I'm also like indigenous Pacifica, so that's also why I'm like really into like nature and like the connection between your body and nature. We don't really have like any ancient religious practices. We do have like our own religion where I'm from, but it's pretty modern. So it's not what my ancestors were practicing. I would like to know what it was, because I feel like that's something I would connect to a lot more. But I like where I'm at right now.
Love that. What you gave?
Yeah, just kind of going off of, appreciating where it's all coming from. I just feel like we're 2,000 years removed from Christianity. There's a lot of, mistranslations that went on that helped us, or not us, that kind of got us to this point where we're at now. That's kind of why I figured the language of these religions is important. That's why I'm learning Hebrew and Arabic, so I can properly learn, going back to like what the Bible really says about certain issues.
I love that. Yeah. Getting your own like interpretation.
Yeah, because like even just like simple translations of like in the beginning, that's not what it says in Hebrew. It says in a beginning, and that can create its own metaphysical debate of just the first three words in the Bible.
Literally. The first three words.
Yeah.
I love how you mentioned that, because that's something that like I feel like we just like run with it. Just like, yeah. And then whenever we hear something, just like everyone just like, yeah, this was in the Bible, and it says, and especially in regards to like homosexuality and just like gender identity. Yeah, and I also kind of want to talk about that if you want to talk about
Sure.
that. Yeah, so like how have you guys seen like gender? I don't know what my question is. Go ahead and say like I don't know where I'm trying to go with this. Yeah. Like what do you think when it comes to religion? What do you think is why there's like so much tension when it comes to gender and religion?
So for me, what I've been taught is religion shapes our culture, and culture shapes how we treat women.
Mm.
And down the line, going back to mistranslations, and even within Islam, there's the idea of the Hadith, which is, so there's the Quran, which is the book, and the Hadith is the sayings of the Prophet. And there's a whole extensive list of, the million things the Prophet said, and how reliable they are. And depending on which sect of Islam you follow, you may find different things to be true or not. Kind of also, to get the politics of religion, just kind of choose and nitpick what you like.
True. True.
So yeah, like if you actually read the Quran, and like the few like truly like we can verify the Prophet said this, Islam is supposed to be a very like a religion that very it really lifts up women. Like Khadijah was this super like powerful merchant. She had all this power within the city, and um, and she was also the first technical Muslim, being that she was the first follower of the Prophet.
Yeah.
There throughout the entire time, women are lifted up, but we look at it now where, like, what was it? Only a few years ago, women were allowed to start driving in Saudi Arabia. So I don't know where it started and how it got started, but at some point we lost this message of, this praise that we're supposed to have women. They put in a lot of work.
What about you, Rue?
Yeah, I think because I was raised Catholic and then my dad's Protestant, so it was pretty much like a predominantly Christian household. I would go to church with my mom, but sometimes I would go with my dad. I preferred to go with my dad because it was like less like organized. Like we'd have to sit up and kneel and whatever. Like I just kind of like listening. And I think for me, because I do identify as a woman, I think it was hard when people would, again, like in politics and religion, pick and choose what they like. I think it was hard because I can't remember what book it's from, but it's that set of verses from the Bible that they talk about like what a wife should be, like you should be obedient to your husband. Like that is like a really, really, really misconstrued section of the Bible when it comes to like the duties of a wife and like what a woman is supposed to do. It's extremely misconstrued. But my religion teacher in high school, like he wanted to talk about it. We sat down in class and we talked about it, and he was just like, I personally, like, he believes, like, he's Catholic. He went to University of Notre Dame. Like, the guy's, like, very, very much Catholic. And, but he believes, like, kind of like a different side of Catholicism. He, like, really believes that, if we're shaped after God, like, that we're made in his image, that, like, God is not just a man. God is a woman. God is all of these things. Like, it doesn't matter how you refer to God. Like, it really doesn't matter. It's your choice. But how would we be made in the likeness of God if you're a woman and he's not, or she's not a woman? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter. And we took that section of the Bible and we really talked about it. He was just like, it's not meant to be like a derogatory thing. It's actually meant to be like, if your wife is as dutiful to you, then you should be as dutiful to her. It's supposed to be like an equal thing. And like I think that's a very misconstrued thing. It's like, oh, like the man is supposed to be the dominant one, the woman is just supposed to be submissive, do what he wants. But in reality, it's a push and pull. Like we're supposed to be doing the same thing. And I think that's kind of why I strayed away from like Christianity, is like the politics of being nitpicky and like just choosing things and like really just hammering down on something that like can be interpreted in a lot of ways, and a lot of the time it's like very construed in a way that's demeaning to women, and it's really hard to like stomach that because in Catholicism there's a lot of saints that are women. There's a lot of women that have done wonderful things and like really pushed like the doctrines and teachings of Catholicism. I also took a class here. It was Intro to Latin American Studies with Dr. Cerrido. I really love that class. You guys haven't taken it. Unfortunately, if you're thinking you can't take it. But it's a really good class. It's mostly an art class, but we talked about this. I think she's a saint or she's a martyr in the Catholic Church. I can't remember. But she is considered like one of the most feminist Spanish literature writers. She actually was very much Catholic. She was a nun, I think. I can't remember what kind of nun, a Hermite nun, I can't remember. But she dedicated her entire life to educating herself and like learning things and reading things and writing things. And she wrote a couple pieces actually about Mary. And I know a lot of people in Christianity kind of view like Mary as like something different. So like my dad's Protestant, they're like, oh, like she's the mother of God, but that's about it. Like she like gave birth to Jesus, that's it. But in Catholicism, the relationship with Mary and Catholicism is very different. It's like the mother of God, like just not just God, but and of Jesus, like both of them. And we believe in like the Immaculate Conception and stuff like that, the Assumption of Mary. She has a very different position in the Bible if you perceive her to be that way in Catholicism. And this nun was saying like, oh, like if she's the mother of God, then she's the mother of everyone. She should have a more important position in the Bible. If we didn't have her, we wouldn't have Jesus, we wouldn't have God, we wouldn't have Catholicism. And that really opened my eyes to a different perspective. I really enjoyed the way she wrote things and like how she explained it, like that she is a figurehead in the Bible. It's not just Jesus, it's not just God. Like these things would not exist without her. So we should give her like more attention. We should like, because Mariolatry is like what people perceive to be a bad thing, but they're like, she's saying that it's okay to have this close relationship with Mary and admire her in the way that we do because she is so important. And so that was really interesting to me to see that, because if you read the Bible like that, you wouldn't necessarily perceive it to be that way, but the way that she wrote it made sense in my head.
Yeah. I want to piggyback off of what you said, and like I also like kind of strayed away from Christianity. I still identify as a Christian, but like I'm still hesitant, if that makes sense. And I think the main reason why is because like the role the media has, and Christianity being the default, so I think that's where it probably comes from and stems from, and would like for you guys to like, talk about that and religion and the misconceptions in the media.
So yeah, being Muslim, I have a lot to talk about that.
Yes.
Like it's really bad. Pre 9/11, we didn't have too much. Like we didn't have nationwide, we didn't have a whole lot of like conceptions of Islam. It was just kind of, that's a thing that exists. Cool, whatever. And then post 9/11, everybody, not even just within Islam, but Sikhism and everyone who is perceived as, Middle Eastern, which goes into its own issue, was just targeted from this. And then it got even worse once ISIS came around. It kind of revived that. Just everyone perceiving Islam as this, they're all terrorists, they're all crazy, whatever. Even my own dad, like I told him when I reverted to Islam, he was like, just promise me you won't be a terrorist. I was like, damn, my own father. But that's just because of like, how the media portrays it, because there's not much, when you the only major like popular connection of Islam is with terrorism. And therefore we, you don't hear this aspect of Islam, of like the charity tax, the 2.5 mandatory tax that you're supposed to give out of your income. The constant charity work, and this like super close knit communities that we have all around us, of just other Muslims helping out Muslims, and not even just within Islam. Like we always help out other people as well. But you don't see that because it doesn't get views.
And you won't know that if you don't take the time to educate yourself. Absolutely. What about you?
I think like Buddhism is kind of like the religion everyone's like, yeah, whatever it exists. Like, I think it's not in like a bad way. I think it's just people don't really understand like the intricacies and details of Buddhism. They're like, oh, like you meditate and like Buddha exists. Like they don't really know that much. And then obviously people like kind of use it as an aesthetic, which is like that's a whole other problem. But like I just don't think many people know that much about Buddhism to like really portray it in the media. I mean, the most media portrayal they've had was probably like the Vietnam War, when like people were when like monks were like setting themselves on fire and be like, can we stop doing this? Like this is not good. That kind of stuff. Like it's not very much advertised in media versus like Christianity, because like I'm from a Pacific island, that is the default. Christianity and Catholicism are the defaults. Like that's a whole other thing, but the way that they do things there is like really different. Everything is like, oh, like we are a Christian country, so we do things this way. Like I think that's what's really hard is, especially as like Indigenous Pacifica, to like take that in, because like that's not the way that we did things before. Like we had clans and the chief system, like we still have that stuff, but it's not the way that things are right now. And so it's like really hard when we start tying Christianity into things, because it's like, but our like traditional practices, customs, and like aspects of our culture had nothing to do with Catholicism or Christianity. Like this was stuff that we did because our ancestors did it, and like they probably did practice a different religion. I have no idea. We don't know. And so like it's just crazy to think about like how much that's like media shapes, and like not propaganda is like a really strong word, but like how things are taught to people. Because even laws from where I'm from, like they're like, oh, we did it because of Christianity. I'm like, but that like maybe doesn't have a place, like, because now we're like being the judge when we're not supposed to be, especially in Christianity, we're not supposed to be doing that. So I think it's like really hard when media gets into things, because again, you get into misconceptions, like you start to go in directions where you didn't think you were going to go to. So I think it's pretty difficult to discern like what's an educated decision and what's like not an educated decision.
And like, how does that make you guys feel, as Christianity being the default, and you guys practicing religions that aren't, how does that make you feel?
That kind of brings me back to this greater conversation that I've seen slowly starting to roll out, of the connection between Catholicism and Hispanic heritage. The Spanish colonized Mexico, made it a Catholic nation, and that power that it had of just the intense, like, mass conversion that happened within Mexico. And a lot of people, including myself, are starting to realize that, a lot of Mexicans specifically, is that a lot of us are beginning to realize that, we're all native too. We just, got this like brainwashing of Catholicism, and, Catholicism, it basically is the culture. Going back to, religion shapes culture, shapes how we treat people. And that includes ourselves. We have this massive Catholic identity that we forget that, we come from Aztecas, Mayas, and all them. And that it's just Catholicism is the way to go. Like in my hometown, there's 5 churches within a square mile. And, every other corner has some sort of, mural of Mary and Jesus, and it's just super drilled into that. but we kind of forgot where we came from, and I kind of don't think that's a conversation like that we're ready to have at a very like broader sense, like even like within the homeland.
Mm.
Um, Considering that the nation is over 90% Catholic, um, so that might cause a lot of issues. Me being Muslim, I'm now kind of outside the circle, and I'm now able to see that a little bit better now. But yeah,
Any last remarks, guys? I don't want to take up your time. Anything like I haven't asked, or like anything you guys want the viewers, listeners to know about religion?
you said it earlier. It's kind of um, religion is all kind of the same message of do good unto others as you would want done unto you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so just be mindful of that, and also um, we didn't really get into it, but religion has been used to hurt people quite a bit. But I think we should also be mindful of the helping power religion has had. Like me myself, also being part of the LGBTQI plus community and being Muslim, it's kind of a conflict, but it's just something I can't not have. Like some of us can't leave religion because it's just like so ingrained into who we are,
Mm-hmm.
and just the idea of leaving it, like I wouldn't know like how to like move myself through the world without that lens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, spiritual self. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tapping into our higher self. Yeah, that's really what it's all about. What about you, Rue?
I guess like I don't really know how to put this, but it makes sense that Christianity is the default because that is like a very like there's a lot of sections underneath Christianity. I mean, there's Protestant, evangelical, Catholic, whatever. It makes sense that it's the default, but it's also because the default is because like of colonization. I think that's like really important to acknowledge. I'm from a tiny little island. There's only 18,000 people, but back then even less. A lot of the stories that we pass down is like, yeah, we were colonized, and that's the reason why we have these religions. But now we've progressed into this timeline where it's hard to separate colonization from the Catholicism and the Christianity. They're like, oh, like it's okay now because it's not like that anymore. But it's like the result of the way we treat others is because of that process in which we adopted religion. And I think that's like really important to acknowledge because, like Gabe said, like it's very hard to detach yourself if it's very ingrained within your culture and your people. And I'm not saying like, oh, like you should just drop Catholicism because like we were colonized. Like, no, if that's something you identify with, if spiritually that makes sense for you, go for it. But it's also important to acknowledge like why that's the default and like why we ingrain a lot of this in our cultures and our traditions and customs, and like acknowledge like that's not the way that it was before, and like maybe it's good that it changed, but maybe it's good that we like revisit that stuff. Because for example, like the indigenous like religion from where I'm from, like they incorporate a lot of Christian stuff and a lot of Catholicism. It's kind of like Santeria sort of, but they also acknowledge like the old gods from our ancestors and like how we used to practice, and like those stuff like kind of makes sense when you think about it, putting them together. And I think that's totally okay. I know some people kind of differ in that opinion. It's like one or the other. But if the blend works for you, like I don't see anything wrong with that. Like that's your spiritual journey. Not everyone's spiritual journey has to be the same. And I think that's also important to acknowledge. Like you may identify as Christian or you may identify as Muslim. It doesn't really like matter as long as it matters to you and it makes sense to you and your body and your heart. That's okay. It doesn't really matter what other people are doing. If it makes sense to you, go for it.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And that actually ties in because every episode I end with like an inspirational quote.
Cool.
And it goes back to like what you, like I love how you said that you don't really like, that you not really practice Buddhism, but it's like all different religions, like you take in, what you want to take in. But yeah, so I just want to remind my viewers that, you should just try to aim to be a student of life. And if religion doesn't, if a specific religion doesn't, tie into like what you believe deep down, then find what it is that resonates with you. And at the end of the day, like we've already said this, all different religions, yes, they might be different, but at the end of the day, they all are saying the same message, spread love, and we should try to unite and help each other and uplift one another, because that's what it's all about, you feel me? But yeah, with that being said, that's the end of this episode. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you guys so much for doing this and taking the time out of your day. So yeah, stay tuned for next week's episode. And yeah, don't forget to be you guys. Peace.